Oh, thank you for joining me today. Well, this is the Thursday, June 22nd edition of our video devotionals. Thank you so much for joining us today and hope your Thursday is going well. And here we are again. We've got another cloudy, rainy day, and I think this is supposed to continue maybe a day or two, something like that. But we've just kind of been on one of those holding patterns. But we've needed the rain, and then after this, if we don't get rain for a good while, then we'll be in good shape. There's a lot of rain down in the ground now. The gardens are looking great. And it kind of reminds me of last year. We had somewhat like this, a lot of rain. All of a sudden it got dry for maybe a few weeks, but some things really thrive when it does things like that. And it looks like maybe it's going to set up for that same pattern. At any rate, it is Thursday. We call this Trusting Thursday. And as always, we think about if you're saved, there was a time you trusted Christ. You put your trust in the Lord. And for me, I was 12 years of age. A 12-year-old, what does a 12-year-old know? Well, I know from the age of 7, I remember being in a church where the Bible was preached, the gospel was preached, people got saved, and it was a Bible-centered church, and I heard that. Wasn't sure if I was saved, wasn't sure if the decision I made when I was 7 was, a decision for salvation. So I made the assurance of my salvation when I was 12. And so all that to say, I had to trust. I had to call out to a God I could not see. I had to trust words that were in a book that to verify them, you accept it by faith. So the point is this word of trust. And then you live for God by trust. The just shall live by faith. So all that to say, this is a day we're just reminded of that. Okay, so I'm going to go to the Today book as we read through the Bible in 1 year's time and read some portion that we've read that corresponds with the day. Then we also look in the Today book. So today's June the 22nd. Notice this, in 1851, the date of the San Francisco fire. I don't have any statistics, but that was a huge fire. I'm sure a lot of lives were lost and a lot of property was damaged, destroyed. It says Jonathan Edwards was dismissed from his pulpit. Now this is interesting. It doesn't give the date here, but I think Jonathan Edwards was around, I will say somewhere around maybe and this can certainly be verified, I'm going to say somewhere between 1725, 1775, somewhere in that period. But here's what it says. It says, on this day in history, Jonathan Edwards was dismissed from his pulpit. The reasons given were that he preached against bad books, okay, the dance, and unsaved taking communion. Now, if I was to look at this and think to myself, bad books, how about the dance in the middle 1700s, okay? I'm sure somebody would laugh at this and say, good night. Jonathan Edwards, it doesn't say this here, but I know he was known for the message, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. And it said that he would write that sermon out, had that written out, and he would read it. And people in the congregation would be under such great conviction because it was basically about certainly about the judgment of God and what it would be like and is like for a person who is not trusting Christ and them being on the precipice of hell, on the precipice of destruction. And it's interesting that he would preach that, and yet he also, rightly so, preached against the things of his day. And that's just like today. We look at today and go, good night. If he had that problem in his day, then look at our day. But every generation is really the same. Society is what it is, and God's people should fall in line with the Bible. But anyway, that's an interesting thing there. Then it says in 1873, the date of the first service in England for Dwight Moody. 1941, Hitler attacked Russia. And we're going to stop right there. So we're going to go to the Bible here. We're going to be in Job 33 today, and we're going to get to it kind of quickly here. And otherwise, thank you for all who watched the videos. Now, let me just say this. I don't think I've said this. We had a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful revival Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And we had, the messages couldn't have been any better for us. God gave us great singing that we had scheduled, and he gave us some that came. And we were able to use that we had not scheduled. And God just used the meeting. I know in my heart, and I'm encouraged, and I'm ready to go forward and do more for God. Be closer to God. If the main thing out of revival doesn't bring us closer to God, we may do other things. We may increase things. We may decrease some things. But if we don't get closer to God, then you know what? Then eventually all the things we're going to do or not do is going to get out of whack anyway if we're not drawing nigh to God. And I was greatly pleased, and I appreciate everybody that came out, and so I appreciate everybody who prayed. If you prayed for the revival, then your prayers help make our revival a success. So thank you for that. Okay, so Job 33, we have a figure that shows up in chapter 32 here, and his name is Elihu. Now you've got the other three that's being back and forth speaking to Job, and now we've got this man by the name of Elihu. He basically does the same thing the others do. He comes and kind of tries to tell Job, what the issue is here. Notice what he says here in verse 33. Let me make sure I get this right. In verse 32, Elihu speaks. Okay, he begins to answer Job. Verse 33, he continues, and he'll continue in chapter 34. So the point is, he speaks quite a bit here without Job responding to this man directly. But notice what this person by the name of Elihu says, this fourth man. Wherefore, Job, I pray they hear my speeches and hearken to all my words. Behold, now I have opened my mouth. My tongue hath spoken in my mouth. My words shall be of the uprightness of my heart, and my lips shall utter knowledge clearly. All right? So he's basically saying, look, I'm validated here to speak to you because he says directly, my words shall be of the uprightness of my heart. He said, I'm right with God, basically what he's saying. He said, my heart is right, and I'm letting you know that. And then notice what he says here in verse 8. Surely thou hast spoken in mine hearing. He's talking to Job now. And I have heard the voice of thy words, saying, I am clean without transgression. I am innocent, neither is there iniquity in me. Behold, he findeth occasions against me. He counteth me for his enemy. He putteth my feet in the stocks. He marketh all my paths. He's basically saying, here's what you said, Job. And notice what he says in verse 12. Behold, in this thou art not just. I will answer thee that God is greater than man. Why dost thou strive against him? For he giveth not account of any of his matters. And then he goes on just to say some things that are obvious. But here's the point I want to make. If we went all the way back to chapter 1 without reading it, the Bible tells us that Job was a perfect man and upright. That's what God said about Job. So Job was innocent in this situation. Here's a man that walks up and says, hey, I can speak to you. I'm qualified because I can speak using the words here from the Bible. My words shall be of the uprightness of my heart. He said, look, I'm right with God, but you're not right with God. Isn't it interesting? That's where we need to be. I say more than careful. Here's the thing. I can't see your heart. You can't see my heart. There are some obvious things we could look at and say there's a person, for example, if someone never darkens a church door, then you can say, look, they're not faithful to the house of God. And a lot of people that would never go to church are just not saved people. Are you saying that saved people that don't go to church are not saved? I'm not saying that at all. I'm telling you, though, that there's some things you could look at and say, if you saw them do something, you can say, well, that's just not right according to the Bible. But again, here's the thing, though. You can't look in each person's heart. You can't look in my heart and look and discern some things, especially in situations like this where Job is in a great trial because of his uprightness, because he is innocent, because God says, here's a man that's perfect and upright. And God said to Satan, because of that, that's why the trial is going on. But here's a man that shows up and basically says, okay, you say, Job, you don't have any transgression. And I'm telling you, you're not right. But here's a man who says, I can tell you that because I say, my words shall be of the uprightness of my heart. Well, I'm not going to doubt Elihu maybe was a good man. He spoke some things about God that are certainly true. But he was wrong here to attack Job and say, okay, Job, you say you're right. I say I'm right, but I say you're wrong because I look at your situation and say you're wrong because I'm reading a situation in which I think that God's judging you. And Elihu was wrong. Elihu was wrong. So here's the thing. Let's just determine, number one, to be right with God ourselves. I think there is too much of this judging of other people, of things you don't know, and not enough of looking at ourselves and saying, hey, let me look at my life. Let me judge myself and say, okay, I'm going to look at me, and by the words of God and the Spirit of God that I have, I'm going to keep me right. Now, God does use other people. Look, I'm a pastor. My job is to stand up and to warn people about sins. I do believe that God gives a pastor an insight to the people that he ministers to that I think sometimes he sees things they may not see, or they're doing things, and God places within a pastor's heart that shepherding to say, hey, we need to get back on track here. But there's a whole different idea here when someone says, you know what, I'm going to tell you, you're not right, but I'm right. Boy, you don't want to hear that, do you? That comes across very, very tough, hard to accept. Especially in this case where Job was right and he was in a great trial. Elihu just jumped right on him and says, I'm right, but you're not. So all I'm saying is let's look at our own backyard. Let's take care of ourselves and try to make sure that we're doing the right thing ourselves. So I'm going to stop right there. I went a little bit longer than I intended to, but you know what? At the end of the day, Job was a great man, had a great testimony with God. And sometimes God just silently says, you know what, I'm going to wait here. And then he'll speak up and Job's going to be validated. But be careful about making sure you yourself, me, that I'm right. Okay, let's do that. Otherwise, I want you to have a safe day, healthy day, and have a great day. Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow.